Hello and welcome to The Wizard and the Priestess. I am Nuala and my co-host is...
Matt. Hello, Nuala.
Hello. Today we are up to number 21 of 2.0 Journey. And today we are going to start off a series. What are we doing, Matt?
It's kind of the countdown, isn't it?
It is. It's a bit of a countdown towards the impending Earthling.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that. Impending usually ends with a different word.
Does it?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
So this is the countdown to Earth.
Yes.
Really?
The impending arrival of my little Earthling that's been growing inside for almost, I don't know, how long? 10 months? Not quite 10 months.
10 months?
40 weeks, Matt.
I mean, from now.
Well,
how long has it been now?
I don't know.
Okay.
We're in...
Sometime.
I'm very close. So we have decided to create a bit of a series on kind of the way of walking from preconception through pregnancy, through birth and into the postpartum. And then also we're going to go into, what's that called, Matt? When you're growing.
When you grow, what's growing called?
Yeah, like what is that one called?
Infant development.
Oh, yes, development.
Good. You're ready for motherhood again?
I'm ready as I'll ever be. So today we're going to start with preconception. So number 21, preconception, diving into the journey. So
this is this is your area.
Yeah, this is what I
do.
It's what I do a lot of, and spend a lot of time with women and men on this journey towards making a baby, and then during the process of having a child and in those early years. It's probably my niched market at this moment in time.
So what are the common questions you would either get asked or ask them? Do they come separate or together?
So most of the time a woman will come, usually when she's been trying to conceive for some time, and then she's kind of used up all resources.
Yep.
Now, recently and in probably recent years, I've adjusted the way that I work, and so I'm mainly attracting people that have either they've been maybe successfully trying to conceive and have had one child, and then they know that when they're wanting their second baby or their third child that they'll come to me.
Yep.
And we'll start working more regularly together before.
And what's the most common roadblock?
Most of the time it's just lifestyle stuff. It's not really paying attention to what they need to be paying attention to, or overly focused and hyper-vigilant with things that are probably not the most important. So what I see is being one of the... there's a few things. First layer is the understanding if you've never fallen pregnant before, or if you haven't even delved into the realms of pregnancy or preconception, a lot of the time women and men themselves are really uneducated on the physiology of their form. And we've spent probably the greater part of their lives avoiding pregnancy. So you created this energetic void from top to bottom where there's like a cut off. And so a woman would, in order to be able to have sex with her partner without conceiving, there's, we've talked about the pill previously on here, and, we're going to block the cycle so that there's no chance of that occurring. For a man, there's very, very little information. And for a woman also, it's mainly in terms of sex education, what you learn in high school or even primary school now, where I think they've started something in primary school, or at least I remember something in year 6 about banana. I feel like that happened in year 6.
Banana?
Putting the condom onto the banana?
I didn't go to that school.
Yeah, well...
Right.
Laguna Street reference.
Wow.
No, but I feel like there was something about that in that very just at the very end of year 6 there was something about, and it was more about like that preparation in terms of like as hormones are changing and shifting, we didn't really get an insight into actually what's actually happening. And so that's what I find a lot of the time is I'm educating women and men about what that actually means.
Yeah.
And how a lot of women don't actually understand when they ovulate. They don't know that you can only really conceive for like probably 24 hours potentially 48, and
A month.
72 max a month. And so that's like a huge thing to learn the basics of your cycle. Then we've got to learn.
But how many patients do you know that come in that they don't know when their cycle is, but have to use an app? What do you think about the app?
Obviously, I don't really like predictor apps. Anything that is predicting your life is not real, and it is not connected or correlative to you. However, there's something in an app that I've softened with over time, because I just recommend that my patients turn off the predictor. So you're the only one inputting data. So any data that's coming back is yours that you've put into it. And so that when we look at it, there's no, because often women will come and say, oh, I'm 2 days late from my period, but I've got a negative pregnancy test. I'm like, well, you're not 2 days late to anything. This prediction is just predicting based upon what the input data you've put in previously. And if you've decided that I've got a 28-day cycle because in my head I think I get a period every month, and now I'm actually specifically tracking it, we might be seeing something completely different. I don't really mind apps. I quite like specific ones that allow you to track your basal body temperature, allow you to track your cervical mucus, allow you to track and understand how much bleed you're having, what sensations you're feeling. All of those things, I really utilize a lot of it. My thinking in terms of that is that a lot of women, because once we start on the preconception journey, usually you come a little bit too late. So you're already I've been trying for 6 months and I'm not pregnant yet. I thought it would happen really easily and it hasn't. So we kind of have to move ourselves out of that and kind of go into, okay, let's just look at optimal health, because fertility is the key to optimal health. It is a very clear indicator of how healthy and how well you are.
Like the report card.
Absolutely. So it is a massive report card. And so even if we look at that even more basically, if we look at a woman's menstrual cycle, that is the report card for that month. And that month could be led up from 3 months prior to that. So sometimes we'll have a really stressful experience in December, and come March, we've had this really strange bleed. I'm like, oh, how does that even make sense? Well, because actually in that 3-month process, we hadn't really released what had come up. Usually we'll see it straight away, but sometimes we'll see these like really bogus out there signs and symptoms that occur.
Is that, say, the trauma, let's call it, making its way through, and then that's just the time period it's taken to...
Can be, absolutely. And I think that's just something to touch on now, is the process of the primordial egg. So when we think about eggs in our body, and so a doctor will really like to, if you're going down that route, with preconception, they like to do some blood work, and the blood work they love to do is some really basic blood work, and then they also really like to hone in on whether you need any vaccination updates. That's like pretty much it. Basic iron, sometimes thyroid, TSH if you're lucky, T3, T4, free T3 and free T4 if you like. Exceptional antibodies if you like really push or if you're having issues. But to get actually a real thorough outlook on the whole is really difficult. And so when it comes to they also really like to do this AMH test with anti-Müllerian hormone test, and that checks to see essentially how many eggs you have active. Now, when I say active eggs, there might be another word for it, but that feels like a real simpleton term that we can all understand. Active eggs are sort of the eggs that are in the pot available to be created, moved into life. Then we have what we call primordial eggs. Now, those primordial eggs essentially are within our body from the moment our mother was conceived inside of her mother's womb. So you can see the picture of the grandmother who is pregnant. And inside of that pregnant woman is a child that is a girl. And inside of that girl, she has her ovaries. And in those ovaries is you. Now, you are in a primordial state. Up until your mother is say she was 20 years old when she conceived you. 12 months prior to the conception of you, that you move from primordial state, which is unaffected by the world around you, other than the spiritual, right? So that spiritual red thread isn't gone. That's always being implicated by what's going on. However, from the physical physiology of you as an egg, 12 months prior to your conception, you move out into the active world. And you move out with plenty of other eggs. You're not just on your own.
Yeah.
And then in the process of Genesis, either way, when ovulation starts to occur, then you get chosen as one of those follicles. That then inside of that follicle is the egg, which is you. That's always been there. That follicle is created by the body in the woman's environment, and that essentially is the initial kind of spark of life that moves into active zone and moves out to meet the sperm to then potentially create life.
Yep.
So those 12 months, so you could have been in your mother's womb for 20 to 40 years as she was a human. You could also have been in the 10 months prior to that. So say 20 to 40 years, you've been inside primordially. And now you've moved into the active pool of eggs. So therefore, this AMH, anti-Mullerian test that they do, which checks the hormones that tell you how many follicles you currently have available, is only based upon the 12 months or whatever, within that 12-month frame. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It has there's no way of checking how many primordial eggs are available to come in.
Yep.
So what the AMH really is telling you is where you're at right now in this moment, like
That's
any
a
other blood
snapshot.
test. Snapshot of what is right now.
Yep.
That doesn't have anything to do with the lifestyle. It has everything to do with your lifestyle in this current moment.
Yep.
Now, I've had patients who have gone and walked through, numerous avenues in terms of preconception, and they've been one foot in the alternate, lifestyle, fixing, sorting, supporting their whole, and one foot in the, the medical system, and they've kind of tried to walk those together. And we can do that, absolutely, and I do that with most of my patients potentially are that way, inclined to keep one foot in each raft, essentially. But what you'll find is that the raft that's a medical raft will constantly keep pushing you into a way that is like, faster, here now, get this done.
What's the medical approach for what you were just speaking about?
So after they've done some blood work, if they haven't identified anything, they would send you for ultrasounds, and they would send you and then they would tell you that you have 6 to 12 months to keep trying, and then come back in 6 to 12 months if you're not already pregnant.
And do what?
If you are not pregnant 6 to 12 months, they might try.
Is there something wrong with you?
You could be seen as it's called something really particular, but like unknown infertility.
Right.
And then, or if there is something particular, there could be, there could be underlying endometriosis. So they might go in and do a laparoscopy and cut out the lining and hope that clears it up enough, because there might be scarring. They might think, okay, well, you're not ovulating every month regularly. If you're not bleeding every month regularly, then we can kind of rule into that you're not ovulating every month. So we might give you metformin if your glucose is looking a little bit questionable, or we might give you put you on the pill just to kind of regulate you and bring you off the pill a little bit, see if that has any impact. We might just, we will do the AMH test to check whether you actually have any eggs, meaning in this snapshot, in this moment with the lifestyle you're currently leading. And then they might say, okay, well, that's not working, so let's get you on this drug like Clomid, which actually pushes your body and forces your body to ovulate. It's essentially turns off your body and makes it feel like you've gone into a menopausal state, so you're not pregnant. There's no form of pregnancy. We turn off the Clomid, and because your body comes back online, it goes, oh, all right, okay, let's go, and it pushes out an egg.
That's like a jump start. Essentially, what is those jump starters? Yep.
That's how Clomid, from my perspective, from what I've understood, does or works. So then you'll have women. So I've had a patient come to me for a long time. She was actively trying to conceive for quite a few years, And when we started working together, I was pretty much her primary caregiver. I had her on herbs and acupuncture, and we were trying to delve into and peel back these layers, which is something that I'm really focused on, is really understanding our what we would call the kidney jing soup. So the mum and dad soup that has created us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to create life down here, but mum and dad essentially created us. They gave us our 7 po and our 3 horn and, distributed all that energy, which we'll talk on more when we talk into pregnancy and like conception pregnancy next week. But think of it in the sense that like they've created our constitution. That's what was established in the initial Big Bang.
Yep.
And then as we've traversed pregnancy, we'll talk about this next time, is just how that actually works through. Now, when we think about that, we have to understand that that was our baseline. And so wherever we base started, then we have our lifestyle added into that, and then we have all those layers on top. Then we have our womb trauma, we have our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual trauma that we've brought, we have our soul's contract, we have all of these pieces coming together. And then now we want to have a baby, want it tomorrow. And so, for example, when I have these patients that have come to me after years and years of working together, they get to a point where they're like, I'm done now. And there's a point where I say, okay, I fully hear you and I understand. And we've got to kind of peel back those layers and understand that emotionally, we're not 100%. Fertility is a really hard thing to talk about for a lot of women, because it feels really hard when you're not able to house a baby, or you want a baby and they're not coming in. It is really heartbreaking. And therefore it goes into that spiral of shame and guilt and what I could have, should have done, what I haven't done, I've started too late, all the problems that we've come along with it. However, life wants to life. And if we can create and establish a space that allows things to come towards us, we're creating the abundance of life. When we move from a place where we want something we don't have that is external and outside of us, we're actually missing the point. And I'm sort of doing a bit of a weavy-wivey road here, but I'm trying to bring it back to this patient of mine who, it was very clear she had some really deep-seated emotional stuff going on. We worked really hard to try and get to the bottom of it. We sort of didn't get to the bottom of it because the anxiety kept coming, the emotional impacts of her family, who was so loving and caring, but there was everyone in her family seemed to have some issues. And so you can tell that there's something really deep going on that hasn't been aired and hasn't been moved through. Eventually, she went and got this AMH test done. It showed that her AMH was at about 15. For a 30-year-old, 15 is pretty solid. It means that there's plenty of follicles. It means that you've got a good set of opportunity to make a baby. So there's nothing wrong with the amount of eggs that you currently have. They then thought, okay, let's put you on Clomid. We'll do the jump starter. She was on Clomid for about 10 months. She then changed specialists, moved and adjusted, got a different specialist because she wasn't pregnant by that stage. And they were just happy to keep her on it.
Of course, yeah.
And she didn't really want to do IVF yet, and she was still focused on what we were doing, and she was really committed. And that was really great to see, but there was layers and layers we weren't quite getting to the bottom of, because there was other stuff, It's easier to focus on the physical than it is the metaphysical. And so there's those pieces of the puzzle that I could see that I couldn't quite help unlock, if that makes sense. And then we got her, she went and did all these new tests. They had all the tests, and they start going into natural killer cells, and they'll look inside the womb to see if there's like a heightened antibody response inside of the womb, which makes perfect sense if there's inflammation, which makes perfect sense if there's stress in the environment, which makes perfect sense if you feel stressed. So it's not like, or if you have a little bit of extra weight, it makes sense that there's going to be heightened inflammation in there, and they're going to identify that. Yeah. So there's a certain protocol that is known as the Bondi protocol that is really...
The Bondi protocol?
Yeah, it's by a particular guy that has kind of coined it, and then there's a few people, iterations of that, but essentially he's from Bondi, and he essentially keeps people on like prednisone, steroid, and just tries to keep... there's 2 drugs that they take the whole time throughout that. Anyway, I don't want to go in that, but essentially my patient went to a new specialist. They did the AMH test. Her AMH that was at a 15, fairly healthy for her age, had dropped to a 7 in 10 months. So they're like, oh shit, okay, we need to go for IVF now, because you're obviously getting old and you're literally
How old?
getting, she was 30, so she wasn't old at all, but it was getting, she's like, oh, you're about to jump off the cliff now.
Yeah.
And the cliff dive, and then you go down, your AMH will drop to 0 and you'll have nothing left. May I point out that it doesn't matter, because that's just the 12-month. You have tomorrow you'll have the next 12-month snapshot going forth. So it's the primordial eggs that they cannot count that actually tell you how fertile you are. And so it's all about getting that cycle and optimal health happening on a holistic level. Anyway, she eventually, it turned out that, which I sort of knew all along, that there was a bit of a sperm issue. And
Not from her.
no, obviously not from her. But they, if they do the sperm, is another thing. This is a really thing that I've been thinking about and working into, is just like sperm health is such an underrated thing.
Well, it's massively declined since, I think, the 60s.
Yeah. So in the 60s.
Like hugely declined.
Yeah. In the 60s, when you would go and get your sperm tests done, they were looking for about 50 to 80%. They wanted a 50 to 80% return. If they didn't get that, they were a bit concerned. So then you would go down the route of like 50 to 60. I don't know what they were doing then, but probably Clomid was an option. And I don't know what they do for sperm health. There's not really a lot to do for a man with sperm health issues. They're just like, okay, well, what we might do is we might offer you IVF because there's a sperm issue. That's usually the route they go. They don't go anything into the actual physical forms of the man. Even though I've seen a patient go from 0.1% on his sperm test. So this is, I'm saying, in the 50s and 60s, it used to be 50 to 80% they want to see in terms of sperm. This is the overall. 50 to 80% they were happy with. Now they're happy with over 4%. That means they're happy with a 96% rubbish rate.
Wow.
As long as you've got 4%,
All good.
you're good.
You're healthy.
So it's a bit of an indicator that these sperm tests are definitely like...
I think it's every medical test. If they keep changing the definitions and what the results mean for each test. So like we spoke about, I think in episode 4, the constipation thing. Constipation, the true definition was 12 inches of fecal material a day. Modern day is now if you go to the toilet once every 3 days, you're not constipated.
Yeah, right.
It's just doesn't.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
And it's strange too, because it's like, well, obviously they're basing that upon people that are surviving, not thriving, because you are not thriving. And this is the thing with fertility. You need
I know a great podcast they can listen to for that.
Oh yeah.
Hashtag episodes 2 and 3.
It is such an important thing to remember that our fertility is the ultimate sign of overall health, and therefore if we really want to thrive for our future, and this is what I bang on about all the time, is like we can make a baby. Scientifically, we have the means to do it, and there are obvious reasons why we would choose to go down that kind of IVF route. There are absolutely there is space in the universe for that. What I find to be true though is there's a lot of people out there not thriving, not actually living their best life, not feeling optimal. No. And yet they're being offered these courses of action that really shouldn't be essentially the first point of call. If you're not sleeping well, pooing well, breathing well, eating well, all of the layers, good episodes early on, but it's like, if you're not doing those things, if you're not optimally in health, then why would it be so that you would all of a sudden make a baby that is going to be a healthy baby? Why would that just happen? And I know that people say, but I know so many people that are not, that are unwell, that are like, junkies, that, feeling really bad. And then they're taking so much drugs. They're not eating food. They're literally unwell people, and they can make a baby. And I remind them, but they've got love in their hearts in the moment of creation. And that sort of brings us back to, I'm not sure if I finished what I was talking about before, but hold on to the love thought And I just want to finish off with the idea of the implications of using medical science in creating children sometimes has a more negative and brutal impact on the whole than we like to kind of
Acknowledge. Yeah.
And that is one of the hardest things, because once you start moving more and more down that path and down that route, you are sort of being encompassed in this space that is not focused on optimal health. It is not focused on the generations to come. It is focused on giving you what you want right now. And that might be the answer sometimes.
There's a place for it, yeah.
But I'd like to remind everyone that there is so much more to life than having a child. And I have seen it numerous times with women who have yearned for that child for so long, and then they get it and it was the hardest thing.
Do you find they end up resenting the child?
I don't think that they resent the child as such, but honestly, as a parent, you resent your kids every now and then. It happens. No one is immune to that.
Yeah.
But there is something inside of them that it's almost was because they weren't optimal at the early end. They were in a weakened state. They then move into this pregnancy in a weakened state. They then move into the early postpartum in a weakened state. They then move into parenthood in that weakened state. And unless they at some point click and go, okay, I've got to adjust, I've got to move here in a different way, I've got to feel into something bigger and more powerful and potent than I am right now, we sort of lose. We start to see lots of ailments. And you don't need to look too far. Kids are sick. And
we've got more doctors, we've got more therapists than ever before. We are the sickest we've ever been. It makes no sense.
No.
It kind of does if you look at it.
It absolutely makes sense.
But people don't realise at the moment of conception who your mother is or was, who your father is or was, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, who they were at that time imprints on the child.
Yes.
People don't think about that.
Yeah.
So I've had a lot of couples similar to you, but kind of from a different angle, where they would come to me because they want to conceive. The first question I ask is, do you want to have kids? Do you want to do this journey with that person? I ask them separately first, then I ask them together.
Oh, that's awkward.
Well,
do you do it anyway?
Saturday night.
So they
having a few drinks.
He said no, and you said yes. So how do you feel when you're together?
Think of like a reverse gender reveal party.
Okay, yeah.
No, but I have to ask them separate because a lot of the time they won't get pregnant because one of them doesn't really want to do that with that person.
Or they just don't want the baby.
Yeah.
So the one woman usually is on the preconception journey. She wants the baby. Yeah. She's driving. She's been doing all the things physically, trying to maybe touch in the mentally. She's working so hard. And then she's like, oh, yeah, but, he doesn't really care.
Yeah.
And it's like
the mind says yes, but the body's just like, no, not this guy or not this girl.
Not this girl or not this moment or not this thing. Like,
just not, yeah.
Yeah, go on. So you ask them this question in front of it. What have you done it where they've
so we've started a book club and
it's been going really well.
Yeah. So we have monthly meetings now and
and it's pretty much just the men that didn't want the kids.
No, so I would, because a lot of the time I'd need to treat her more than the man usually. For guys, it's more congestion that's preventing it. This is purely from a physical viewpoint. It's usually congestion around bladder, rectum, prostate. Everything's congested.
Okay.
So the spermatic duct can't do its thing. It can't flow properly, as well as the left kidney and the renal system and blah, blah, blah. With the female, I found it's more arterial. So that comes back to pressure. Arterial and venous, getting blood towards and waste away from those organs. it's funny, I was treating a physio, I think it was just before COVID, and she was looking to get pregnant with her partner, and asked her the question, all good.
They both wanted the baby?
Yeah, both wanted the baby.
Ah, tick.
So great start. But she was a physio, and I was seeing the way she showed me some pictures of how she was treating people, and she had her elbow right where her right ovary is. Uh-huh. So for those of you who don't know where ovaries are, they're in a I'll just show you mine. They are between the pubic bone, edge of the pubic bone on the right, and the ASIS on the right. So the anterior superior iliac spine. They're about halfway between there. But the ovaries are about the size of an almond, and they're about 60% deep, looking from front to back. They're
What
about,
does 60% deep mean?
so looking at the front here to the back here, front skin,
Oh, right.
it's about 60% deep.
Yeah, okay.
And they obviously attach to the uterus via the uterine tube. We don't say fallopian tube anymore. I can't remember why.
Because there was a man that named it.
Right, there you
More
go.
than likely. I mean, I don't know. The uterine tube.
So the uterine tube. Now this tube is approximately 2 to 3 millimeters in diameter. So it doesn't take a lot for it to get a little bit congested, good word. And also 60% of women have an extra ligament attaching, that's one of the iliocecal ligaments called the ligament of Clayet. And a lot of the time, the right ovary can get caught up in congestion in that area. So a lot of women, when they cross their, which way is I think, the left leg over the right, it congests that area.
Oh, yeah.
Or if they bend down, pick things off the floor with one leg all the time, leading forward, it creates a torsion in the pelvis, which can create more congestion in that side, and that can prevent the egg from being fertilised. So we simply unwound that, and she got pregnant within about 3 months. So a lot of it is, that's the anatomy. I don't know where I was going with that.
Yeah, cool. I mean, and I
Back
think
to the love.
Back to love. We'll come back to love in a second. But it is really, like, there's obviously physical and physiological aspects that we need to take into consideration. What I find commonly is that we have these options. Like, we have you as a clinician, we have me as a clinician, we have these options to actually unwind, to kind of land into, like, the way that you'd even describe the pressure or congestion. Like, it makes perfect sense. The pressure that is like women, essentially, my generation, obviously, because Matt's generation is well beyond mine. But my generation of women, it is really...
What's your generation about?
I don't know. Uranus and Capricorn, 88 to 96. But the generation that we live in today, we have all the girls, we've grown up as equals to our counterparts until such time as we want a baby. Right. We have grown up. We have never, I don't know personally, I'm sure that there has been disparity in time, but I have never felt that I was not maybe given equal opportunity to work. You know, I remember being 14 and, you know, we all got jobs at wherever. Like, there was never a, you know, like the simple job to get was never an issue. Now, I'm not talking about the jobs when you're in the corporate realm. I have no idea about that, and I'm sure those things still exist today. But definitely in terms of getting a job as a 14-year-old, going to university, getting a good education, none of those things from my Anglo-Saxon upbringing had felt any different to my male counterparts. However, when I did reach, you know, maternal age or age that I felt I wanted to have a child, because I had grown up with all this opportunity to have my own business, to work really hard, and I think many women in their 30s now, like even 20s now, it's, you know, obviously now because the generation of women wanting to have children 25 to say mid-30s and then 40s, right? So that whole generation of women, I would say, have grown up with this idea of being able to work, make their money, look after themselves, kind of
having their own life.
Having their own life. But what that brings with it is the pressure and the pressure of maintaining that after we've had a child. And now we live in a world where you can't economically really survive unless you have 2 full-time incomes. So per person. Yeah. So you need 2 full-time incomes per person.
Yep.
And so then if you're in a partnership, you literally are left alone, and the only option you have is to dip into the system to ensure that they're providing you with the care and the things that you need for your child so that you can get back into the workforce that you've been a part of your whole life. So you really only know that. And then you're being, in the separation zone from child to mother. Anyway, we're going to go into that another time, but it's just one of those things that, like, I think we are the first generation that's actually felt that. Because, I mean, my mother's generation, she definitely didn't. She was the first to have the opportunity to work. But it wasn't as if she'd always grown up with that equal opportunity.
Right.
She had to some extent, absolutely. But there was always this undertone of like, oh, well, you got this thing because we never had it. You got this thing because we, it was like, oh, I'm so privileged. I have to work really hard. Like, I have never seen a human work as hard as my mum works. And now she's like, so yeah, you're up there, Mum. Busy in her head all the time because she didn't have the opportunity to really drop into her body until she had children. And I think that's what happens for a lot of us now. We literally are under so much pressure. So essentially when we get that release and that relief and use these modalities that we offer to actually feel into our bodies again, it's like, wow, okay, that really helped me. And then we've got to go to the next layer and actually get to that spiritual understanding, that emotional, deep understanding of our own, like what we're actually walking with and what we're carrying around. And then what I was saying before is this connection to love. Like, there is so many layers in the whole preconception journey where it's like, I ask this question. This is probably one of my questions that I ask. It's like, how much do you love yourself right now? Like where you're at, where you've been, your lifestyle, how you're looking after yourself, what you're seeing around you. How much do you love all of that? And then how much do you love your partner? Because a lot of the time, we just want the baby. We love the idea of being a parent.
That's more you're in love with the idea than the manifestation of that idea. Yeah.
And I feel like there are some women that would probably do better with creating other things. Now, I only say that because I think we've lost our line and our connection to Mother Earth as the human being, the vessel, as women, human women. We're here to procreate to some extent.
We are from nature. And a lot of the times...
We are nature.
Yeah, we're an expansion of nature. And people who you were saying before, they're not thriving, they're just surviving. Does Mother Nature want to promote that?
No.
Not at all. Mother Nature's plan is to always create something more beautiful. And Mother Nature has no interest in promoting sickness, laziness, disease. That's our plan, i.e. human beings. We started that game. And now we're trying to use chemical tricks to play tricks on nature. And I mean, you just have to look at the health of kids now. Diseases are going through the roof. And diseases that are around today weren't around 100 years ago. And the common argument you get was there because they didn't know how to test them, because they didn't need to test them. So going back to the love of self and the love of the ideology, what would you say is the biggest deficiency in that regard for young women especially?
Well, it's a disconnection. I would say it comes from that heart center space. And in Chinese medicine, we talk about the heart and womb, which is called the Bao Mai, this connection from heart to kidney being the overarching element of reproduction. And so, or water being the element, but kidney being the organ. And so if we are disconnected from self, we have this where our heart center is all about connection. So we end up staying in disconnection, staying in this kind of realm of functioning in our brain and upward movement with pressure downwards.
Yeah.
So we're trying to move up, and there's all this pressure coming down. And then there's a complete disconnection to what actually serves our soul, serves that center point, serves our inner knowing and our inner being. And so what ends up happening is we actually cut off. And then obviously we want to just have sex without falling pregnant. So we literally are cutting off the Baomai, that connection. So a lot of the time in the work that I do is literally just opening up that channel. And in opening up that channel, my aim is to get you to start following your heart and moving from your heart space. And sometimes there's patients of mine that'll just drop off and they're like, actually right now is not the time to make a baby. And I'm like, fantastic for you. Because a lot of the time that clock doesn't stop ringing.
Speaking of clocks, that's what I was going to ask you before.
Oh, yeah.
From what you see, what's the average age where that biological clock starts to tick louder and louder?
I don't really believe in it.
Right.
I think that you can have an optimal baby as long as you've got an optimal cycle, no matter what age you are.
But what do you see clinically?
Depends, because it depends who I see.
Yeah,
so I would see women from like late 20s to mid to late 30s to 40s, like early 40s. They're the people that I see.
Yeah.
I probably had, there's been numerous patients that haven't actually conceived as they're reached like late 30s to 40s. But there's lots of layers in that. And unless we actually look at the spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, their sexual connection, their love connection to themselves, to their partner, to their lifestyle, it's big work. And this is why I'm really bang on about preconception being the pivotal moment in point in time. You have 12 months from when that egg moves from primordial into active. And if you really want to create the best future generation for not only yourself as a parent, but for the child that then one day will become a parent, you really want to be focused now. You want to be focused on that 12 months before you actually want the child.
Are you saying 12 months before the date of birth, or 12 months?
Conception.
So it's essentially 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at all that work you have to do.
Yeah.
And if you haven't looked at that one time in your whole, so many women will come to me like, oh, I just fell so easily with the first. It just happened. And then the second, like, it's so hard. It's like, oh, I really, really want this child. And it's like, because you have just as much, ready, you're going to test me on this? You have just as much power to allow a baby to come in that you had to create you. Now, Matt, how much power do you have in creating you?
We have ultimate power, ultimate potential.
Yes.
That's the yang coming into yin, isn't it? Hashtag creation.
When your mother and father met,
yes,
and decided that they were going to create you, how much power did you have in that?
Are you asking me mentally?
I'm
metaphysically?
asking you physically. How much power?
Well, in time, space, I had all the power because I was the one who chose them.
Right, you chose them. And in that moment, you chose to come in.
No. When are we talking? Was it
Conception.
At the moment of conception, you mean?
At the moment of conception.
At the moment of conception, the soul doesn't really go in straight away. It sort of orbit drip feeds itself.
Okay.
And like as the body grows, as the cells form, as it becomes a little human, it goes in more and more and more. But the soul doesn't fully, let's say, attach itself
to the physical,
to the human until it's like a small person there.
Okay.
So if you've got like a really, really, really young child, the soul is still forming to that body.
As in birthed baby or okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I would have a different perspective on that, but that's okay. I just don't believe that I have much control other than the soul having that thought and that vibrancy of like, this is my choice to come in. But the action comes from mum and dad.
That's the physical action.
Yes.
Yes, that's the space-time action.
Okay, so do you have any power in the space-time action, Matt, to create you? How much?
Consciously, no, Nuala, while we're talking like this.
Thank you. Oh, it just ticked for me. Just tick.
There you go.
So,
You've
no.
won. Well done. Thanks for joining us, ladies and gentlemen.
All I'm saying is that at the end of the day, we need to allow life in.
Yeah.
We can't control it. We can't force it. We can't make it happen.
No.
All we can do is set ourselves up just like we do when we're trying to meditate. Essentially, we set ourselves up. We put ourselves in a nice corner, calm, space not going to be interrupted. We allow ourselves to sit on a nice comfortable cushion. We get the incense going. We breathe really nicely. We might have the music happening, and we have give ourselves the opportunity to move towards a meditative state. We don't get to choose whether we go into that meditative state. We can allow ourselves the opportunity for that.
Yeah,
and that
we
is
set ourselves up for it the
Exactly.
best possible
Absolutely.
way. Yeah.
And so this is what I would say in preconception. We want to set ourselves up, selves, mother, father, in the best possible way to have the best opportunity to create thriving, beautiful, dynamic life that has the potential to create more potential, to keep creating and moving forth. Because if we create dodgy seed now, we are literally creating dodgy seed for generations to come.
And it takes, on average, have you ever read Pottinger's Cats?
No.
Where they did an experiment with cats who were raised on raw products, raw meat, raw dairy, and then processed foods.
No.
And they found genetic flaws within a generation.
Within one generation.
One generation. And then it took 4 generations to breed it back out of that family line. But going on allowing the conception to happen, focusing on not having it. When we focus on something that we don't have, that we might think that we want, but we don't have, so we're focusing on the lack of it, we actually create a psychic block to the thing that we say we want, which puts the ultimate barrier around allowing it in the first place. That was all.
Power, Matt. Power to you. So I think one of the big things that we just want to finish that off with is just we want you to take all of this information on. Be really conscious in your conception. Be really conscious that you are at the pivotal point of creating life in this moment in time, if you are in this moment in time. And if you can give yourself at least 12 months to actually divinely prepare yourself for what is to come or what you may allow yourself to receive, the future is going to be brighter and brighter.
I think also being, congruent with the person you're doing that with as well.
Absolutely, remembering
And
that
it
love...
should go without saying, but I feel like we should say it.
Okay. You must love your partner and they must love you, and you must choose from love to create a child.
Think of it like, so a lot of clients I would see, they have a baby because they think that's what they should do. They hit a certain age, oh yeah, we should have kids. Cool. How's that going to go? And I explained to them, it's like you should, quote unquote, have kids because the relationship is so good, it needs to be shared with the world. It's like if you're in business, the business is going so well, it has to expand or it's going to explode or implode. It's having so much love there for yourself, for the other, that the world needs to experience it as well. And that's what creation is.
It's really cute, Matt.
Thanks, man.
Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you really enjoy your preconception journey. We will see you next time.
See you next week.
You've been listening to The Wizard and the Priestess. Thanks for stopping by. Stay connected and be open.